Hey everybody, I'm Juan Penso. I'm a senior product line manager in the Carbon Black container security team, and I'm gonna go over a short demo for the runtime networking map of the Carbon Black container security product. Okay, so let's go over the capabilities of the runtime security with the network visibility map. I'm gonna go over an Acme Fitness application, which is a demo application that I'm using a lot. It's a polyglot application with different microservices in a cloud native architecture. You can see the architecture of the application. It has one main front end, which is a shopping workload. It's connecting to the different microservices in the backend, like carts, orders, catalog, user services. And those backend services are connected into different databases and cache layers for that application. On the right side, you can see the application, and that's the shopping. That's a front end basically, and it's also publicly exposed, so you can go and browse that application to see the different components. If I will click on catalog, that means that I'm basically going to the catalog microservice. You can see different catalog items and contacts and so on and so forth. And if you want to see how it's installed on my cluster, you can take a look on the left side of the screen. I'm connected to my Acme Fit cluster. I'm connected to my Acme frontend namespace, and you can see I have one shopping workload in that namespace. If I will change the namespace to backend, I will see all the backend services, so cards, catalog, payments, and users. And in this case, the databases is not installed in my cluster. It's installed outside of my cluster on different VMs. Now, let's take a look on that application from my Carbon Black Container Security Visibility Map perspective. If I will click on the Carbon Black Container Security on Inventory Network, I will see one cluster that I manage. That's the Acme Fit cluster. I have one Egress controller for egresses. The CNI is Andrea. It's built on Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. And I have a load balancer that basically is underneath that Egress controller. If I will click on View Map, now I can see the connectivity of the different microservices and the different namespaces, which is part of that cluster. You can see that I have different system namespaces, like it's managed by Tanzu Mission Control, the data plane of Carbon Black. You can see Cube Public and Cube Systems, but you can also see my Acme frontend and backend, so basically the application itself. If I don't want to see the namespaces for the system and I just want to see my application, I can open up map settings and just remove view system namespaces. That will leave only namespaces which is not part of the system, and in this case it will leave my Acme front-end application, my Acme application. If I will click on load balancers, I will see that I have one Acme load balancer. In this case, it's installed on TKG on Tanzu Kubernetes Grid on AWS. So you can see I have an ELB here, which is exposed. And if I will browse that, you will see the same application as you see on the right side. It's the same Acme Fitness app. So that's the load balancer. And if I will go now to Acme frontend, I will see that basically that external connectivity is getting into the shopping workload. That shopping workload is being browsed by also a load generator because I'm loading traffic just to have some kind of traffic for the application. And if I will click on that shopping workload, I will see how the workload is connected inside that cluster between different namespaces. So you can see that the shopping is basically connected to the Acme backend namespace, to the carts, orders, users, and catalog. If I will take a look on the side panel on the right side, you will see on which port and what's the protocol for each and every one of them. Now I also have a risk assessment for that workload. And if I will go and scroll to the right, I have View More to basically open up my workload page that will show me more details about the workload. So if I will click on View More, now I'm basically getting in and seeing a lot of different dimensions of data for that shopping deployment. So it's a shopping deployment. It's part of the Acme Fit cluster. That's the image that it's using, and that's part of the image scanner. You can see the vulnerability and fixes for that vulnerability for that image scanner for the specific image. That's the shopping pod which is running. And if I will go to network connection, I will see now here exactly what I saw in the map. So I can go to, let's say, Ingress, and I will see the Acme load balancer. And if I will go to outbound cross or inbound cross namespace, I will see the connectivity to the different cards. So you basically have a workload page that consolidates everything, including hardening perspective. So if it's violating any hardening rules, like enforcement of non-root, memory limits, and so on and so forth. If I will go back to the network map, and we were on the front end side, so you can see the shopping is connected into the backend namespace with different backend services. If I will click on the backend, now you can see Egress Connections. Now the Egress Connections are basically external consumption of services outside of the cluster. And if I want to see exactly what kind of services the specific workload is consuming, I can click, let's say, on users, and I can see that it's going out to my egress group, which is db.acme.local. And if I will click on that, I will see that the databases are outside of the cluster, and that's the way that the workload is approaching them or consuming them. Another thing that I haven't said is you can also create your own egress group. So when I'm adding egress group, I can give it a name, and basically according to a DNS name or a DNS subdomain or an IP range, I can just regroup egress IPs or sources that I'm consuming. So if I will go back to the cluster level, you can see I have TMC control plane or CBC control plane. Those are groups that I've created for the endpoints of that service. If I'm getting the system namespaces back, there's another option of filtering that view, so you can see only encrypted connections, or if you want to see only unencrypted connections, and egress connections to public destinations or to private destinations. So if you're consuming something from within the organization, you will see that as private destination. And that was a short intro and basically a short demo for the network visibility map and the capability to basically understand with one single point of view how the application is being connected, the different components from Ingress external source to internal cluster between or cross namespaces inside the cluster, and from the backend to the egress connectivity outside of the cluster. Thank you for being with us.